Hello and welcome to the VFM podcast. I'm back with Shona Wiley, the co-founder of Future in Mind. We're here to talk a little bit about psychological safety and its implication in the workplace. Now, if you've not seen the first episode on psychological safety, I suggest you go back and watch that one first because this is really a continuation of that. Shona, welcome back. We're going to talk a little bit about psychological safety and its practical impact in the workplace and how we can maybe improve things. So one of the tasks that VFM is often asked to perform in an organization is something called a health check. And that's where we'll go into typically a business and look at various aspects of the business and how they relate together. It's almost like an MOT, we sometimes say, of a business. Now, one of those aspects, one very important one, is obviously the people and the dynamics between them. And one of the things we're quite interested in is the psychological safety. So if you were sort of looking at or assessing a team's psychological safety, what would be your process? How would we go about looking at that?
Yeah, so we do have a process that we follow really to measure the levels of psychological safety. So first of all, the leader has to be interested in it, first of all, and they would have a conversation with me around, well, for what purpose? Was it to drive innovation? Was it to get more collaboration? Is it to have less silos in the organisation? Is it a performance issue? It could be a number of different things. But I then have that initial one-to-one meeting with the leader to really find out for what purpose do we want to measure psychological safety. After that, the next stage is to have an overview of what the concept is, and we do that with the full team. And the reason we do that is really just to make sure that everybody understands what psychological safety is, why it matters, and why we really need to have it within our organisation or the organisation and the teams. So then the next step from there is to have an anonymous survey done, which is the Fearless Organisation scan that we use, which is Amy Edmondson's scan. And that is really just looking at how psychologically safe do we feel in this team. And there's 7 different questions that go through willingness to help, what is their attitude to risk and failure, is there open communication? So there's about 7 questions that are focused on psychological safety. And from there, we then have a debrief on what is it within the team that we believe what are we seeing in terms of the output. So I've done some analysis, and then we spend half a day with the team going through that analysis. And from there, we kind of pick up different bits and pieces about different actions, new behaviours, and it kind of flushes out some of the things that maybe some of the team are not that happy with or don't feel psychologically safe.
Thank you, Shona. So I think once you've got the results of the survey, if it's is it very obvious when there's something wrong? So a lot of people say, well, no, my new ideas are rejected. Is that something then you kind of focus on, or is it more sort of broad? When you have the facilitation, you sort of, do you just focus on like, do you go in and say, why aren't new ideas accepted here, and whose fault is this? Or is it something more broad than that you look at?
It can be both. Sometimes there is some key themes that are quite broad that, depending on the levels of psychological safety in the team, we might just be only scratching the surface. So yeah, it can be quite broad, but then there can be very specific areas where people don't feel psychologically safe. So that might be in attitude to risk and failure. It's not okay to make a mistake in this team. Or I don't want to take that risk because I know it's going to fail, and then what's going to happen after. So it really just depends on what the output of the survey is.
Right.
And then we really look at, well, what do we then discuss from there?
Yeah, I suppose it must be quite difficult sometimes, those conversations, particularly if say if it is the leader who is, I don't know, overbearing or not willing to listen to people. It must be quite I'd say, well, yeah, difficult conversation to have. Is that something that you find difficult to navigate, or is it something that comes with experience?
Yeah, they can be difficult conversations. It just really depends on how open the leader is. But then that's my job to be able to sit with the leader in the very beginning at our one-on-ones to make sure that I'm really preparing the leader for
Right.
what potentially they might hear and also how they're going to respond to some of that new information potentially. So I carefully prepare the leader. Now, sometimes I get it right and sometimes I don't. So when you're in the facilitation, sometimes the leader does not respond that productively. And then we have to notice that and notice what is actually happening. So, yeah, I would say that the facilitation of
Yes.
this sort of debrief has to be done by an experienced facilitator. You can't just jump in, get your results, even if you do it online, jump in and then just say, let's have a discussion about it, because it needs a very careful facilitation. And because ultimately you could damage the psychological safety in a team if you're starting with either defence or not responding productively. So yeah, it does need to be managed very carefully in terms of the debrief.
Of course. And have you seen sort of immediate benefits from things, or is it more of a long-term application?
Yeah, helping to make teams psychologically safe is not where you wave a magic wand and you're all psychologically safe now. It takes a lot of time and effort, and it does change over time. But you need to put the effort in. So it's not a quick fix. However, you can get immediate improvements. So the example that I really come to is a leadership team that I was working with, where we had done the scan and we'd had the half day debrief, and we'd gone through a lot of bringing to the surface some of the feelings within the team about the way that the leader reacts to things and then how they feel. So yeah, we had actually brought a lot to the surface. So then I created with the team a lot of their actions and their ways of working, and they were then away doing their 2-day strategy sessions. And actually I got a call from the leader after these sessions, just to say I was away by that time. And he just phoned to say, Shona, I don't know what kind of magic dust you sprinkled, but we've just had the best strategy days that we've ever had. There was so much conversation. There was so many new ideas to the table that we've never really had that before. So I don't know what we did, but it certainly worked. And this was actually from quite a skeptical leader in the first place. So yeah, I was delighted that there was some immediate kind of impact on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Shona. We're running out of time. I think this is a really fascinating idea, and I think it's also can be very important for for any team. This sort of exploring this, and like the questions you mentioned there. Do I feel safe, or am I happy? If I put forward new ideas, do I feel listened to? And those sort of questions, I think, are really important to. Not just for the bottom line, for being innovative and for being a high performing team, but actually just for being enjoying work and feeling valued. I think one of the things you mentioned, having psychological safety can reduce staff turnover. And I think it's if you feel ignored, you're not going to stick around in any organisation for long at all. Just to close, Shona, I mean, if anyone watching this wants to find out a bit more about this or about your work, where can they find you? What's the best way to look at?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can look me up and connect with me on LinkedIn. So it's Shona Wiley. And also on our Future in Mind website, we have a lot of resources and a lot of downloads that you can actually look at to help you have these initial discussions with your teams. But also there's some checklists in there and some self-assessments that you can use as well. So yeah, you can get a lot of resources and a lot of information on our website.
Thank you, Shona. And your website, is it The Future in Mind?
It's thefutureinmind.com.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for being with us today, Shona. It's been a pleasure.